if the global economy really does roll over and we have some of the trueflation stuff kind of accelerates and we go into some deflation, central banks will print money and a lot of it, and it'll be the Fed.
Look at China right now.
So I think that
deal with what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So that will be constructive. That's why Bitcoin is kind of holding in as well as it has, and it's decoupling from its correlation to NASDAQ. That's why gold is 3,300 plus and making new highs every day as folks are storing wealth in a neutral reserve asset that is not U.S. Treasuries anymore. And Bitcoin will serve that purpose, I think, for people, and maybe already is in a lot of ways. It's going to be a while, I think, before governments kind of get there. I mean, obviously El Salvador has done it, but gold is still kind of recognized by sovereigns as the place that you could do this. But for people can't easily just go buy gold. Right, they can easily buy Bitcoin. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I bought a gold coin the other day from Costco. It's not. It's got. It's like
they're selling.
They sell you. You can buy them from. You can buy them from Costco.
Liquidity too is like, how do you? Not as nowhere near as liquid as Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like mail versus email.
Right. So for the people, I think Bitcoin will be there, and so I think for now you gotta have to own a bit of both, and
no doubt.
But I think there'll be a transition period at some point where a country, maybe it's the U.S., kind of establishes itself as a real holder of Bitcoin, and then that maybe flips the script on, is Bitcoin better than gold? And
I hope that's us. That's all I say.
Yeah.
I hope it's us.
The Runway.
Welcome back to another episode of The Runway. Today, I am joined by my friend Jeff, my friend Ben, and my friend Craig. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves to the pod?
My name is Jeff, and
My name is Jeff.
student to the game, and I love learning as much as I can about blockchain technology and the applications built on top of it, especially Bitcoin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bitcoin Ben, and I'm just here for the drugs.
There's probably going to be our very first sponsor of the podcast.
With drugs. I'm going to pay you in Coke.
We're going to have the SWAT team in here any second now.
Right off the private plane.
Yeah. How do you think I got here with all of this?
They got to get up. They got to get up like 3 different security doors first to get in here. Good luck with that.
I'm hiding by the plant.
My name is Craig Shapiro. I'm a local Naples resident. I do a lot of macro research and thinking and tweeting and posting on X, and I also trade for a living. So I have some perspectives on some of the nonsense that's been going on lately with tariffs and with Trump and policies, and I suspect we're going to get into some of that.
We got all different flavors here today. I got a student of the game. I got Main Street. I got Wall Street. And I'm just in the middle trying to make sense of it all. So let's chime right into our first story of the day. The FBI and IRS have joined the investigation into the missing $24 billion from the California's homeless funding. What do you guys think about this?
The hell you say? You mean California fucked something up?
The homeless had $24 billion?
So
Yeah, what do they do with it?
So apparently they keep getting more money in California to solve this problem, and then homeless just keeps getting worse, and the money keeps growing. And then we don't know where the money goes. I mean, that's a good question, right? It's like, I feel like for $24 billion, you might be able to just feed the hungry for an entire year.
Haven't people realized that anything that the government sends money to gets worse? That's how it is. The education system, let's just send more money. It gets worse. Everything the government is involved in gets worse. And that's just reality. Because they think that, there's a problem, we just need more money. No, it isn't a money problem. It's a society problem. And the root of all evil is government. It absolutely is.
What do you have to say about this, Craig?
No, I mean, part of the issue also for America has been there's been no disciplined agent on the money spending, right? Like, so at the state levels, they have to run budgets. They have Tax revenues have to meet expenses. They can do borrowing, but they have to kind of run it more like a business. But the federal government, there has been an unlimited amount of money thrown at the federal government, and dropping off the gold standard 50 years ago. But more importantly, just the way the Fed never lets the bond market do its job. Right? If you go back to
Thank you.
what James Carville said, he wanted to be reincarnated as the bond market because basically you can instill fear in anybody. And we actually saw a little bit of that last week. We'll get into that with the tariffs. But up until this point, the bond market has not been able to tell DC, cut this shit out. And so and the reason is because every time there's a little bit of bond market dysfunction, the Fed comes in and says, yeah, we're not comfortable with that. We're going to cut rates. We're going to add liquidity. We're not going to allow the bond market to dysfunction. And so, Congress and the administrations of the last, decades have kind of got hip to this and say, well, we don't have any issue here. We can just keep running deficits no matter what, as far as the eye can see. And we did it during the first Trump administration too. And the last year of Trump was, a deficit buster. And then with Biden, we just ran it up. We ran up the scoreboard like never before. And so you had an economy that was running at maximum employment with record deficits, right? 7% of GDP, $2 trillion. And it's never stopped. So that's the issue, right? When you don't have a discipline agent, nobody you could just throw more, you feel like that, just throw more money at it, right? Yeah. It's just it's not a big deal.
Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome.
And really at the root of all of this is Keynesian economics. That's our issue, folks. We have been working under a system that is absolutely shit because everyone's like, oh, what's wrong with the market? What's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? No, this is the fucking system working as the Keynesians want it to work, because Keynesian economics is all, oh, we got to turn this now. Oh, we got to turn this now.
Central planning is what you're describing,
right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Letting markets
central planning
function.
And you cannot run a country on central planning because life is very fluid.
Yeah,
you have so many different choices that need to be made at a certain moment. So if you're the central planner and I'm average Joe, and I go, geez, I really want to I want to pull over and grab a soda. Then I actually call up my local representative. Hey, is it all right if I get a soda? Hang on one second. Let me ask the lawyers. The lawyers reach out. Well, let's call up the congressman. Hi, Mr. Congressman. What? Well, I don't know. Let's go up to here.
It's obviously absurd.
And
just the point.
Next thing you know, you ain't nowhere near a soda because you're fucking waiting for an answer. Opportunities have a shelf life. And if you have to work your way up a ladder, you lose the opportunity. And it doesn't work. Communism only works inside households. That's it.
What did you want to chime in with, Jeff? I know you wanted to get a point in here. Let's hear it.
Well, I'm curious about this topic here. Is this federal money that was allocated to the state level? Or?
That's a good question, right? So, it seems that way. It seems like, the big argument they always say is, oh, we make all this money. We pay all this tax revenue to the federal government, all this stuff, like, Texas and New York. I'm sorry, Texas, New York, and California, Florida, et cetera. Are they actually... Are they taking more money than they're contributing, and are they wasting it? I mean, I think this is obviously massive grift, waste, abuse, fraud. I mean, the problem is getting worse and they're getting more money. I mean, I think that once you have people that have jobs that are just based on, dealing with the homeless or whatever, it's like, why would they want their job to go away? So like, and this might not even be like, intentional in a lot of ways. I mean, some ways it might be, but in other ways it's like, this is just a problem. It's a level of just enabling. And a couple, I also have a take for what Florida's doing, which is the complete opposite. And we'll get to that eventually. And I'll propose a different thing, which is hope for Florida. What DeSantis is doing here, which is not to continue an enablement. It's actually to help you, to push you towards, a faith-based or a charity-based that can help you become self-sufficient. But we'll cover that in the future.
And if so, like, what are the levels it goes through? Because if it's like federal, I'm sure it goes through some sort of like development economic commission before it gets distributed to the counties or individuals.
It's hard to say. There's a lot of people with their hands in the cookie jar, and then they're trying to figure out where all this money went.
Right.
Where did all this money go? That's what they're obviously the FBI, IRS. They're trying to track this money down and figure out, where it's obviously being wasted. There's obviously some hands in the cookie jar. Something funky's going on here, and I think that hopefully they'll get to the bottom of that for taxpayers.
It seems like it would incentivize the homeless as well. That much money.
That's the point. Yeah.
Well, plus
that's why the homeless rate is growing. It's not, the problem is not being solved. It's getting worse.
Problem solved. They have food, shelter. Well,
Well, I mean, let's remember this is California. These are the people who say, "Oh, you know what we need to do with people who are hooked on drugs? We need to give them needles and hook them on a different drug."
That's crazy.
These are stupid people. And I say that they're not smart people because the other option is they're evil. I would rather.
I think that's a good way to look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
I would rather them be retarded than be evil.
I think I lean towards them being retarded. I think that's more so what it is, right? Where, you see it with families, you see it all the time, friends. People enable others that are doing stupid things instead of being what they really need, which is accountability and, hey, we got to fix this. We're not just going to continue to enable you to do this.
And I'll even say it more clearly. The system is retarded. I don't think every single person who works for the government is retarded. I think the system is so bloated that you have blood or currency. You have currencies running through this big bloated system that a lot of it doesn't need blood. It just needs to.
It shouldn't even exist. Yeah, some of this stuff is just completely unnecessary. Paul, why don't you take us to the next take? That way, because we have a lot of takes, guys, so we can't spend too long on each one. This is interesting. This is what CJ has been talking about. You should tag CJ in this because what he was speaking, he came on Cypherpunk Pod and spoke with me about this months and months and months ago. But now you're seeing, huge multi-$100 billion plus VanEck proposing bit bonds for the U.S. to buy more Bitcoin and refinance its $14 trillion debt. America is embracing Bitcoin. Can you click on the picture and maximize a little bit so I can read a little bit of it? So this is what I think is, and this is like a no risk, setup here. I mean, I guess the risk is opportunity cost and inflation, et cetera. But basically, the U.S. government offers a 90% government bond plus 10% BTC purchased with proceeds of sale. So you get the money, you give a 90% bond that will, over the course of, say, 5 years, give you X percent, and by the end of the term of the bond, you're back to 100% in dollar terms. So you put in $100 million in 10 years or 5 years, whatever it is, however long the bond goes, you get 2 years even, you get $100 million after that period of time. But 10% of that funds went to purchase Bitcoin. So that's your yield. Your yield is Bitcoin, right? You get the Bitcoin plus the growth of that Bitcoin, right? So the sale value equals 100, redemption equals 90 plus BTC value. The investor receives all Bitcoin gains up until a maximum annualized YTM of 4.5% on purchase value of the bond. If Bitcoin gains exceed enough to provide 4.5 YTM to the investor, the government and the BitBond investor split remaining gains 50-50. So this is a version of that. I don't know if I love that last little part of it, but
I don't like that.
Yeah. What do you think about this, Craig? What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, the first time I'm seeing this, I mean, basically, so we're going to lend, individual investors or companies are going to lend money to the government. The government's going to take that money and 90% of it they're going to use to do whatever they got to do, refinance debt or spend down money, and then 10% of it that's going to go directly to purchasing Bitcoin. So that's going to help securitize the value of the bond for the investor, and then it's going to yield. I guess they're using 4.5% because it's probably a 10-year bond. That's where the 10-year interest rate is currently is about 4.5%. And so then after that, if let's say Bitcoin goes to $1 million, basically you get, as the investor, you get half and the government gets half of those gains. So as an investor, your downside is protected because you're getting 4.5%, and your upside is capped because your downside is protected, and your upside is capped to 50% of those gains, and the government gets half the gains on the investment that they made in buying Bitcoin at the current market value. The government has really no other way to buy Bitcoin at this point because they need to borrow money to buy Bitcoin. So I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I mean, I haven't, it's creative, right? I think what this administration clearly is receptive to creative solutions to bringing down the debt because they realize it's unsustainable. So I think everything should be on the table, right? I think they should explore a lot of these things and, figure out a way to getting Bitcoin on the balance sheet, I think is a good thing for America, the country. But to your earlier point about when government gets involved, things go to shit. I am a little bit concerned about, America having Bitcoin and being more of a Bitcoin maximalist, kind of concept, right? So there's the, some of the puts and takes there about, I don't think we need nation states to, for Bitcoin. But look, I think as an American, I'd rather America have control over Bitcoin and Bitcoin network and owning it than other countries, adversaries, or allies. Yeah. So I think it's an interesting idea, and I think that there's a team in place now that's looking at all this. So
I think eventually all governments will own Bitcoin as a reserve asset, just like most companies that are good will as well. I mean, I think it's inevitable. Friends, allies, enemies, frenemies, whatever, will own Bitcoin. So I think the first mover advantage. This is our country. I hope we get the first mover advantage personally. That being said, just because somebody owns Bitcoin, you don't get any control of the network, right? It's not proof of stake. It's still proof of work. So the miners have the real control. Who's making those blocks? Where is that located, right? And right now we've got a pretty strong geographic distribution of that. So, nice decentralization.
Yeah, I'll actually be very short and sweet. I love this fucking idea because what it's going to do, because exactly like every other market, the bond market will have what do you call it, competition on other bonds.
No, this is
this is a great idea, but this one's going to have to improve because someone else is going to really need a lot of money and go, you know what? I'll offer them 100%.
So it's funny that you mentioned that. I mean, they're talking more of just like government treasuries, but there are other bonds that exist that can do this. I think CJK has been on our pod talking about this at like length for months and months ago before now it's gotten much bigger. But the idea is you have a lot of companies and, what do they call? What kind of funds there? Pension funds, et cetera, where basically they can't take tons of risk. But like, imagine going to a pension fund or whatever and saying, hey, like, look, like, you had $100 million. You put $90 million in this bond over 5 years. At the end of 5 years, you're going to get your $100 million back. Like your, real dollars, you'll have the same amount of real dollars. Now you're going to lose a little bit on inflation. You're going to lose a little bit on, opportunity cost, but you're going to get what you started with. But the upside is we're going to take that 10% and buy Bitcoin. There's your yield. So you're downside protected, and now you have upside for your fund. So that's the real play. Where 100%, like you said, is going to go to, the person buying the bond, minus a fee for whoever creates it or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I also see this is a leveler, because if you have like Venezuela or El Salvador offering a higher yield of actual Bitcoin, then all of a sudden they're like an option, where they're like, well, fuck, I could go with the U.S. bond.
More stable currency versus.
I could go with El Salvador's bond. They're offering 50% more, where they're offering like, well, all right, we'll actually, whatever you give us, we'll actually take half of it because we're such a risky, thing. We'll actually take half of it, and we will take half of it and purchase Bitcoin. So we'll only get half of it, the actual bond. The rest will go in Bitcoin, and we'll hold it for whatever, 3 years or 5 years or a 10-year, whatever.
Well, I guess if you do have a riskier currency, you have much higher APY. So technically, you could maybe, if you have, did 60% in the bond, 40% Bitcoin, some unstable, third world currency, you could have, 30% APY because it's hyper. There's a lot of inflation, et cetera.
And
There's a lot of different ways that you could play this, but
and
it's just interesting to see, governments and big, huge funds and companies thinking about this and proposing this type of stuff, especially somebody like VanEck, right? Who's, I think just the conversation being had is interesting. Paul, why don't we move along to the next take? My friend Dominic, I saw he posted this, so we got to read it, and highly recommend anybody who hasn't listened to the series I recorded with him, where we talk about the history of taxation. It's fascinating on the Cypherpunk pod. But here he says, we saw one of the central arguments of daylight robbery happening in real time this week. UK payrolled employees fell by 78K in March, ahead of the new taxes coming into effect next month. This is obviously a direct consequence of dumb policy, but it is also part of a much bigger trend. Income tax has been an incredibly successful tax from the government's point of view, and now accounts for roughly 50% of government revenue worldwide. But the nature of employment is changing. More and more people are turning freelance, half the workforce by 2030, according to some estimates. Collection levels from freelancers tend to be lower because there is no deduction at source, there is more scope for error, non-compliance, expenses to write off, etc. As a result, income tax will not be the mighty revenue generator it was when people worked in one job for one company. Dim-witted tax laws like Rachel Reeves only accelerate the process. This comes at just a time when pressure on government, because of its excess spending, is as intense as ever. The reaction will not be to cut back on spending or reduce tax rates, but more taxes, higher tax rates, more aggressive collection of taxes, and so on. Everyone should read Daylight Robbery. I couldn't agree more with that assessment. Everybody absolutely should read this book. It's fantastic. Craig, I'm kind of interested in your take on this. I saw something recently that there is more millionaires and wealthy people fleeing from the UK than ever before. Even more so than some countries like China and stuff. I saw it was like UK and China were like top of the list of like wealthy people fleeing. What do you think about this, Craig?
Yeah, look, I mean, these governments, many governments have spending problems, they have deficit problems, and they have reluctance to cut spending on social programs, whether it's here, Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, even and I know the UK has similar types of, spendings. And so since, it's third rail type stuff politically to cut those spendings, they need to find revenue sources. And so the tax the rich is the thing, right? And this is even, sounds like more even just kind of tax everybody a little bit more, tax every worker. But the point that Dominic's making, I think, is a good one. It's there's a lot more freelance employees. The idea that you're just going to say, oh, I made this money, I'm going to go pay the government. Like, I mean, I know in America, less IRS agents, maybe people, less desire to pay taxes, on, let's see if I get audited. Not me personally. Of course, I paid my taxes yesterday, and they were they were perfect. But
they were perfect.
But
signed off by 15 different financial people that reading
all right, Trump.
pages of documents.
Perfect. They were perfectly. But
there's no way to even determine it anyway. I mean, you can't even. It's so ridiculous that it's like
But look, there's a point where there's a curve, and there's an optimal level of taxes as a percentage of GDP, and it's typically been in the kind of mid to high teens %. And so basically, as you raise taxes kind of above that, you have deleterious effects on the economy, right? It becomes a growth inhibitor, and the economy slows, and then you wind up losing tax receipts. So
you actually collect less.
Right, you wind up
collecting
less. And so, look, I think that's something that we're Trump's kind of thinking about here with tariffs versus taxes. I mean, he wants to get rid of income taxes in a lot of ways. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security income. Raising the the amount of people who just pay no federal income tax, and transitioning that to more of a consumption-based tax revenue, which is what tariffs really are. It's a consumption tax on people who buy things in America. And so, wealthier people that consume more and spend more will be paying more than people who spend less. So it's an interesting, I think Trump needs, and I'm sure we'll talk about him a lot, but his messaging team, I don't think, is doing a terrific job of kind of explaining, all the plan and kind of where he expects the country to be in 5 years and how it could be a lot better for working people and the poor and people who've been left behind, Main Street over Wall Street.
There's
And-
definitely a level of chaos there right now.
right.
The question is this intentional or unintentional? And I fear there's like so many conflicting things, you know, whether it's intentional or unintentional. Because it's like if you lay out your plan to, you know, exactly what you want to do, what ends up happening is like, you know, we're looking at the lawfare that's occurring right now, the legal judicial stuff. I mean, it's like if you tell them what you're going to do, they'll immediately engage to stop you, no matter what it is. I mean, look what's happening with Doge, which is overwhelmingly popular, and look what they've mobilized like against like Elon's a Nazi and Elon this and we hate Elon and burning down dealerships. I mean, it's just chaos, right? Like craziness. So, but I do understand what you're saying because markets especially, right? Like Wall Street, like wants certainty. They want to know. And also some level of Main Street, they need to figure out, you know, hey, what's the plan here? Because we need a plan for our business, right? Small businesses and stuff as well. So that makes sense.
Now, this is saying that the people are being taxed more because there's no company in between. They're freelancing. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, so a part of what Dominic was saying and part of his book, Daylight Robbery, he talks about how, you know, income taxes have worked so well throughout the past 100 years or so because they just take the tax from you before you even get your money, right? Like you get your paycheck, the money's gone. You didn't even know you had it. Where it's like if they actually had to give you the money first, and then you actually had to send that check, like personally, if you have a company or your own business, you've got to do that, which is so you really feel and see how terrible it is, right? Like how extractive it is, right? But for a lot of people, you know, they're just taxed at source, so they don't even feel it. They don't even see it. They just get their paycheck, but like they didn't even realize $800 came out of it, right? It was $2,500. The government took $800, $900. It's gone. You get $1,600, and that's what you have, right? Like so, people don't even feel it, but as things change, as technology advances, as there's more opportunities to do freelance work, more computer work, more different things that people are doing, consulting, all these different things, which is growing drastically, that income tax is going to be much less because people have expenses, people have real things, right? They're writing stuff off because they have a business, right? So they can. That's kind of what he's talking about. So just at the time when these government programs, the government is continuing to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And they need more revenue more than ever. It's like a cancer that's metastasizing, right? To take care of, they're importing, 20 million, 5 million illegal aliens that these people come from whatever country and they're here illegally. Well, guess what? They have to go to school. They have kids. They have to, go to the hospital. They have to have medical care. So who pays for that? The taxpayers that are already paying, right? So as these things are growing and growing and growing, income tax is going down because more people are doing freelance work. So the trends are diverging, and then you're going to have a situation where people are fleeing, and you're actually seeing that in some of the demographic data, especially in the UK. Wealthy people are seeing the writing on the wall. They're jumping ship, right? Because they can. So that's what's happening here in a lot of ways. That's kind of what he's talking about.
I could only imagine this becoming, growing, because essentially blockchain will allow, I think the companies that will be at risk are centralized, like the Ubers of the world. I think once we start seeing a decentralized version of that type of service, we're eliminating that corporation from the equation.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll probably see more reaching into the pockets.
Yeah, I think the government's fucked, and I think they know it, because through AI, robotics, and basically we ain't having enough fucking babies. We're fucked. The government, as it is right now,
it's unsustainable, this level of spending. Right. I mean, the spending that's occurring right now is like wartime spending, and we're not in a war.
Yeah, well, we're in a war. It's just a war that we can't win. Not with this system. And what we need is exactly what Trump is actually doing. Because tariffs and the way he's actually rolling them out is the only way you can roll out tariffs. You can't lay out a plan and go, this is what we're going to do, when you have enemies that you're going to be negotiating with, and you have a other side of the aisle that hates your fucking guts and has actually tried to kill you a few times.
Yeah, that is a valid point. I mean, I'd like to hear what Craig has to say to respond to this, because I'm sure he has a different point of view on this.
Yeah, he really doesn't have a choice. And plus, no matter what he did, they would scream and yell, and he's the worst motherfucker that ever motherfucked, and just, it's just how it is.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
Well, we didn't really get to any of the tariff takes yet, but if you want to just respond to that, feel free, Craig.
I think you have to think about, or there's some first principles here. One, the American society is broken. We have record wealth inequality. Median, outcomes here are moving the wrong direction, right? People feel disconnected. They feel there's strain, there's depression. I mean, people feel like they're just continuing to get left behind. So if we would have elected the other side, that trend would have continued, right? We would have just kept kind of grinding how the stock market would have been fine, but inflation would have been a little bit higher, and more people would have continued to just get left behind. And so Trump got elected and Republicans got put in power with this idea that they were going to start breaking things. They're going to break the system apart. And I think they got elected by telling you how much better it could look in the future, but didn't really give a lot of the view about how the transition to get there was actually going to be, it's going to be tough. It's going to be choppy, and people are going to have to sacrifice, and it kind of sucks in a lot of ways. They didn't disclose that. And I can understand why they didn't disclose that. It's hard to disclose that. It's hard to disclose that when you're trying to win an election. But now they're in this disclosure phase. And just to your point about his power, right? I mean, in 2026, there's another election. And so he needs to show tremendous progress early in the term in order to make sure that Republicans stay in power in the midterms. Otherwise, he will be the first president that will be impeached 3 times. And so it's he will 100% be impeached again. So he has a short window here to kind of engineer a massive undertaking, which is basically impossible to do in such a short period of time, right? You don't rebuild manufacturing and supply chains that have been hollowed out for 40 years. You don't do that in 4 months. And so we're going through this pain now. And I think this pain is going to need to continue for a little bit of time here. And look, they got to just kind of stick to it. And the problem is when the market last week, started to become an issue, both the stock market and the bond market, Trump flinched and he said 90-day reprieve on the reciprocal tariffs. And so to me, that was not coordinated. That was not 5D chess. That was I'm being pressured by the markets, and I'm concerned that things are going to unravel too quickly, and I don't like that. And my donors are calling me, and this is not as fun as I thought it was going to be. And so let's breathe a little. Let's give it a little bit more time. But we don't really have a lot of time, right? We gotta move forward. So we kind of have to. He kind of has to decide here. How quickly are they going to go? I mean, these negotiations, I don't think they're going to yield as much as people believe, and even the administration believes. I don't think countries are just going to voluntarily give up a lot of the advantages that they've had, and so it's going to be tough. And I think he's going to have to stick with this. I think the tariffs are going to be here for a while. I think he needs to give that certainty to companies that say, "Look, I'm keeping these 25% sectoral tariffs on for the entirety of my term." So that's what's happening. And if we win and the Republicans stay in power, they're going to be on for the next 4 years too. That's how you get certainty. And then people could bitch and complain about 25%, but like at least and you could then say, okay, well, I can either invest here because I know I'm going to get preferential tax treatment or what have you. And so they got to do it. They got to announce it and actually kind of move forward. Then you start bringing the certainty back to the business community, so that you could cycle to what are some of the good parts of the plan, which is these tax cuts, the deregulation, and lower energy prices, the supply side reform. And on immigration, look, I think the immigration policy is meant to protect the American worker so that through this transition, companies don't fire people. Because companies won't fire people if they believe that in 6 months' time, we're going to be closer to a better outcome. If the border is closed, because then they're not going to be able to hire anybody back. If the border is open, right, then people come in that companies feel like they can just go and get labor whenever they want. They lay a lot of people off now, and then they go back in 6 months, they can just bring them back on. But if you don't think that the labor market can grow again because of the borders closed, then you say, you know what? I'm gonna hold off. I'm not gonna fire people, and that's how you keep people in their jobs through this transition. Yes, the stock market's going to go down. Yes, your people's 401ks are going to get hit, but you know what? 20% gains in the stock market for the last 5. That's not reality.
No.
That's borrowing from the future for today's consumption. So sorry, like that's just, we have to get over that as a society. And the problem is America has been so financialized that the economy, the stock market is the economy. And so we're in a little bit of a tough spot here. If the stock market, and I suspect it will continue to fall, what kind of impact does that have on confidence and consumer psyche and business spending and then eventually tax receipts? I mean,
definitely has an effect. For sure.
It's but this is not going to be easy. But I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and they need to start really kind of talking what that looks like, so that the average American doesn't feel like they're just going to get shafted here.
I have so many questions. My first one was I think on Friday, I brought up, I had found that post about the Moran Doctrine. Had you seen that before I posted about it? Or had you ever heard of that? Had you seen it?
Yeah. So Steve Moran, he was in Treasury in the first term, and he then went to the buy side, and he wrote a paper in last November, which went through kind of a variety of different tools that the administration, could employ in order to help bring back manufacturing and kind of arrest the trade deficits and, really strengthen America's manufacturing footprint, and, a ton of different ideas. And one of the ideas, and I'm not sure what one specifically, but the one that's been floating around, I think is starting to scare some people, foreign investors, is a potential tax on foreign holdings of U.S. treasuries or U.S. securities, and as another potential way to, get revenues. And so what it's leading to is, some capital flight, right? Foreigners who've kept money here for a long period of time are now saying, yeah, you know what? I think I might take my money and bring it home. And so that's something we also have to deal with.
What's the logic behind that? Is that an attempt?
Hang on. I also have one. When you say bring it home, are they swapping it for their own currency, or are they actually taking like U.S.?
Yeah, I think no. They'll basically, the idea would be you own a U.S. Treasury bond, you sell it, then you have cash, you have dollar cash, and it may be in an American bank, and that still is security, and that may still be taxed. And so the idea then will be you would swap it back into euros or Swiss francs or yen, and so
we've seen some of that. I think the Swiss franc is
or gold, and really what you're seeing is like it's going into gold in a very big way lately, and that's been part of this most recent rise in gold has been foreigners repatriating out of the U.S. and bringing the money back and kind of holding it in gold terms.
Is the logic of that though to weaken the dollar? So
the logic of that is to weaken the dollar. So basically, in order to create this new or this renaissance of manufacturing here, building back some. Look, I think COVID exposed us in ways that Trump saw. And he basically is saying, we cannot do this again because if we are not ready for war. And so we had no ability to make weapons. We had no ability to make medicine. We were kind of completely fucked during COVID. And so I think that Trump and his advisors have basically said, we need to transition this to more of a wartime economy in order to rebuild critical supply chains. And it was made worse by the fact that Biden depleted the ammunition resources and weapons resources
and the natural gas reserve, pretty much every kind
through
of reserve.
to giving all these weapons and bullets to Ukraine and to Israel. And so Trump's basically saying, look, we got to build this all back. And so in order to do that, you need to really materially weaken the dollar.
This goes to what I was saying earlier about the Civil War initially, when the War of 1812, after the War of 1812 ended, we basically got shut off supply chains because
we didn't have jack.
So we couldn't make anything domestically, and that was kind of like the South initially had said, like, hey, we need to have tariffs, even though it's going to hurt us in the South. Like, we need tariffs here domestically, so we have some manufacturing in case we get into another war. Again, we had spoken a lot about that, about how that number, of course, any tax that gets put in always gets raised, and then the drama of that was a big part of the Civil War. But now, similarly, we're in a similar situation here where we really don't make much here at home at all, and they're probably one of the only functions of the government is national security, right? Protect the people. So like it does seem, which Paul has this pulled up here. Gavin Newsom is suing the Trump administration over tariffs. I don't think he has a fucking leg to
He
stand
ain't
on.
got a legal leg.
Because a lot of this has to do with national security, right? Like we don't make medicine here. We don't make
we are in
bullets,
a
weapons,
national emergency.
Yeah, so I think that's
I mean, the justification for these sectoral tariffs has been national security.
Yeah.
They've used the IEPPA ruling, and that allows them to basically say anything that's deemed national security by us, we can then tariff.
Yeah, they're trillion. What I want to say they're $1 trillion, $1.7 trillion in debt in California or something. I saw something crazy. Yeah, here's Matt Vince Wall says the state of California is $1.7 trillion in debt, and they want government bailout money, but no tariffs. Yeah, so this guy's totally out of touch with reality, totally delusional. I mean, he
lives in California.
They got this Medi-Cal. They want to basically pay for health insurance for illegal aliens. They want taxpayers to fund that. He's asking the federal government for that. I mean, totally. He's just out of touch with reality in my mind. But the next question I had for you, Craig, was, you said that this was like, almost like Trump blinked and they put it out. Like the administration definitely spun it as not that. They basically said, oh, look, we isolated China here. They're the only ones who keep ratcheting up their tariffs, but everyone else kind of said, we're willing to negotiate. So I guess now there's 130 countries or something. I saw some number like that is willing to negotiate,
Oh yeah, they have to.
So how do you think this plays out? Like, do you think that, because you did say they blinked, but if they did, they, Bessent kind of went out and Lutnick or Bessent kind of came and spun it. Like, this was a master plan to isolate China. Do you think that just bullshit?
I don't believe that either.
I think they're, look, I think the idea for tariffs at this point in the cycle is needed. I think the rollout of this, strategy from Liberation Day was bad. And so, look, putting 125% tariffs on China literally can shut the economy down like in a heartbeat. And so I don't necessarily think ratcheting up the tariff war against China is a smart idea. I think that Secretary Bessent is being a little bit naive here to believe that we hold as much power in this relationship as he thinks we do.
See, I would argue we hold all the power because they hold our treasuries, right? We owe, every year we send them more money and products than they send us.
They send us more products.
We send us more products. We send them more money. But the question, Paul, can you pull up how much treasuries China owns right now? My understanding is that over the past decade, they have been selling. They have been selling and they've stopped.
It's close to like 700. I think it's like 780 billion.
Yeah,
it's just actually news just came out today.
It's crazy to say that, but that seems like absolutely nothing. Like if they sold that, like it might crash.
I mean, there were talks. There was rumors that they were selling last week, and that was part of the reason why the bond market sold off. But look, China makes things. China is the largest trading partner with basically every country in the world. And they don't just make, toys and textiles, right? They make drones. They make, highly sophisticated electric vehicles. They make advanced military. So I think there's a little bit of an anachronistic view by the administration about what China actually does. And China's been doing a lot more, better lately.
But aren't we 35? Like, don't they sell 35% of all the stuff they produce to like just us? Like, don't we produce? Don't we buy 35%?
No, it's not that high.
Can you look that up, Paul? Find out how much the USA purchased. Like, how much are we responsible for of China's GDP or whatever?
I heard it.
I think it's
like 18 or something like that.
I think it's like 2%.
It's got to be. It's way higher than that.
Of their GDP?
It's got to be higher than 2%. Exports accounted for 20%, 19.7% of China's GDP.
And we're like 10 to 15% of their exports. So they're saying 3 to 5%. So I was a little bit low. I said 2. But right there it says roughly 3 to 5%. I think that's probably 3%.
A balanced estimate accounting for direct trade and some indirect effects suggests the U.S. is responsible for roughly 3 to 5%. That's still pretty low. Yeah, I guess you're right. That's pretty low.
So they've really diversified into where they're selling. I mean, look, the question really is about relative pain tolerance, right? Who has a higher pain tolerance in this trade war?
I think they do.
I know they do. I mean, this is a communist country that had a starved tens of millions of people in the past. So, and we're a society that, after a 4-day sell off in the bond market, we flinched. So, and so I think we know who has the relative pain tolerance. And so I am concerned. And Thomas Friedman wrote an op-ed yesterday in the New York Times about this. And I'm not saying that he's the best author or the worst author, but he's a fairly well known, and he basically wrote just a piece of basically saying, like, I'm scared as an American citizen that we're going down the wrong path here, trying to fight China as aggressively as we are. And maybe this is not the right strategy, because, putting on these massive tariffs really could, it could really shut down our supply chain. And to think that the rest of the world is just going to box China out too, when China's their biggest trading partner too. I don't know. It seems naive. I mean, the first thing that Xi did this week was he went right to Vietnam. They had a meeting in Vietnam. I mean, that was, and then he went to Malaysia, and then he's going to go to, they're talking to Japan and Korea, right? He's trying to secure, and there was some comments out of Germany today, basically said, yeah, we're cool selling with China. Like, we're not rushing to the U.S.'s side here. I mean, Trump has alienated a lot of people in a lot of countries with some of the things that he said and done. And so we're trying to force ourselves and impose our will. And look, we have a big stick, right? We're the largest economy, the largest consumer base. We also happen to own the majority of the nuclear weapons, and I don't need to get too morbid about it, but I mean, like that.
Yeah, but really, how many does it take?
Yeah.
Right. So
not that many.
It is kind of a, and I was having, and we don't have to go down this path if it's a little too silly, but
no,
I mean, if you think about it, like,
nothing's off the table.
The rest of the world is kind of has been pushing back against America's power in a lot of ways, inching away at us, taking market share. I mean, our manufacturing base has been hollowed out. We have a fentanyl crisis. We have a suicide crisis. We have a depression crisis. The rest of the world is catching up in quality of life. And we have all the nuclear weapons, and it's almost like, well, they don't matter because we're never going to use them. And so the rest of the world is kind of saying, well, America's never really going to attack us. We'll just keep kind of itching away.
I guess the question is, who do you, if you're Germany, if you're some of these countries, like, who do you want to ally yourself with? Communist China, or where do you want to end up? Like, what
this is how,
because you got to make a decision here almost. Like, you're, in a lot of ways, I think it's going to come down to, like, hey, do you believe in, American freedom, capitalism, liberty, or are you, part of this authoritarian, communist, somewhat free market?
I don't think they care.
Communism.
I
don't know.
This is they're watching us. They're watching China, and they're like, all right, whoever wins, we're with you.
Yeah.
We don't give a fuck who wins, just somebody fucking win.
Look, I mean, if you look at the history of, like, fourth turnings throughout time, they don't always end in, like, a peaceful transition to a democratic, process with free and fair elections, right? They often
never do.
They often end in war. And a dictator comes to power to consolidate power, and that, like, it's not 100% certain that this is all going to transition into some peaceful way that where America stays together and all the states stay together, and I don't know. It's like we're opening up a little bit of a risk here that things kind of spiral.
It's definitely a multipolar world, that's for sure.
Yeah, let me throw something out here. What if I were to say that I think that the Trump administration knows the old America is going to die, and he basically just slit the fucking wrist of the old system, and is just like, now we just got to watch it kind of slowly die and kind of twitch. Help me.
I mean, I think that Liberation Day, when we look back in history, will be viewed upon the same way we look at August of 1971 when we left the gold standard. I think he broke the U.S. Treasury system on Liberation Day, because he basically said to the rest of the world, your money is no good here anymore. Your ownership of treasuries is not desired like it used to be. We don't want you owning our bonds and our security prices. We would like for you to invest domestically in our manufacturing, TSM, and Nvidia, Apple, Google,
I mean,
and
those are some big deals.
For sure.
I mean,
we're happy, but it's going to be hard to get foreign. Hyundai's doing a deal here, Toyota's doing a deal here, but it's going to be difficult to get a lot of foreign companies to feel comfortable investing in U.S. manufacturing, because is the money still safe? But I think he's basically saying to the rest of the world, we're going to have and need a much weaker dollar in order to be successful.
We need a new
and this is a new multipolar world is being created, and the speed with which this happens may be unbelievably quick, and so folks need to kind of be prepared for that transition, which I think is happening like in real time. And the Lenin quote that there's years when nothing happens, and then there was weeks when decades happen, right? Weeks and decades, and that's we're kind of in that. We're in the throes of that right now.
Yeah, I think we are literally heading, or we just hit the wall, like you said. This is like 1971. We all knew it was coming, because if just look at what we have done since fucking 2008, 2007, 2008. We've lived on printed money. That's it. So we've had, what is it, like 14 or 15 years, but how more than that, of literally living on bullshit. And I think he's going to use this term because he's not going to be reelected. And I think he's like, fuck it, I'm ripping off fucking Band-Aid. This is all going to be set right, and it's going to be ugly. We got 15 years worth of shit that we got to work through. There's going to be a lot of larger corporations that I think are going to go under because they rely so much on government money. And I think there's going to be a lot of smaller banks, a lot of larger banks that are going to basically they'll probably be rolled in to other existing banks. But I think, like you said, we got to do it fast, folks, because we are changing the engine of this car going down the highway. And we better change it quick, and we better hope we are going from a 4-cylinder to a V8.
Well, if you don't go quick, then the entrenched interests and the elites and will if they slow you down, and then they can push you out of power quickly.
Yep.
And so
I think that's part of why you're seeing chaos.
You got to do it fast. And
that's my point.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a reason for that, and that's what that is. I mean, it's like, you tell everybody what you're going to do, there's 5 lawsuits on your desk the next day.
Yeah.
Every 20 out of all the 20 million illegal aliens, everyone needs to have their day in court. The last court date scheduled for 2150.
and that's what I love about, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, because I've actually been, I love Trump, and I know there's a lot of people that don't like how he handles shit and how he doesn't really lay out a plan. He is good at saying, fuck you.
That is for sure true. That is for true.
And that's the type of president we need right now. Now, hopefully he doesn't say fuck you too much where China goes, fuck you.
What's the, what do you think I wouldn't underestimate Scott Bessent. I mean, I'm incredibly impressed by what he's done, especially when it comes to bonds and markets and all this stuff. So what do you think the plan is here right now? You think that they blinked a little bit? What is the best case scenario as a path forward if Craig was in charge?
I mean, if I was in charge, I would climb down the China tariffs right now, to the degree that we have them. This is because having them be this large is just going to screw over the American worker. It's going to screw over the American economy, the American supply chain, very quickly. I mean, companies can't buy things. They can't get credit to pay 125% tariffs on imported goods. It's just, it's prohibitive. And so it's too, we ratcheted it up because they retaliated. And so Trump's like, well, fuck you. I'm going to retaliate it back. And China's like, cool, you do whatever you got to do, buddy. But we're not, like, as long as you have them on, we're here. Like, and we'll do we'll go about our business, with other countries, and it's all good. And you know what else we're going to do? We're going to stop sending you rare earths, which you need for your semiconductors, which is what they've done.
Medicine,
right? And so if it was me, I would just climb down. I would climb down. I would say, you know what? We made a mistake. We were wrong here. Whatever it was, couch it however you want it, because China will have pain also if we keep this up for long. They just can tolerate it longer than we can. Yeah. So climb down. Let's get in the room quickly, and let's try to figure out like how we can exist in this multipolar world where you have your sphere of influence, we have our sphere of influence here in North America, South America, whatever it is. You do your thing in Asia, and Europe will be back at whatever it is, and we'll agree to disagree on a lot of things. We don't want to go to war. I unfortunately think Taiwan's probably going to be the thing that like maybe gets to the finish line here. Taiwan goes to China in order to make this deal. But that's what I would do. I just don't think that's where they're headed right now. I think they're kind of headed to, well, we're gonna take this to where it needs to go. Because I think that Scott Bessent has a view about China that he could break China, similar to how him and his old boss Soros broke the Bank of England in 1992. And I'm just not sure that that's correct. I don't know that is correct.
What I think.
Reagan also broke the Soviets. So, I mean, there's, I don't know. I wouldn't bet against the guy who literally broke the Bank of England. I mean, there's got to be more here under the hood that we're just not seeing. I mean, I know Bessent did say publicly, he kind of said like,
I
think
we are moving along the path to it's been couched as this Mar-a-Lago Accord, right? That there'll be a grand reset similar to the Plaza Accord or similar to Bretton Woods. And I think we are headed towards that outcome, because that's the only way that this can ever go down, is if it's a negotiated, situation amongst a variety of countries. I think Trump likes to just do bilateral negotiations, because he likes wins, right? He likes, okay, we had a deal with this country and we won this. And he has a score in his mind. He has a scorecard, and he thinks the scorecard is how he gets popularity and votes and approval ratings and the like. And so, but I ultimately think we need a multi-country sit down, probably in Mar-a-Lago, where they hash a bunch of shit out about what the dollar is going to look like, what the RMB is going to look like, how gold's going to fit in, and how excess trade balances are going to be stored globally. Because the problem has been that the U.S. has been the place where people have stored their excess wealth, and that's led to a structurally overvalued dollar, which has hollowed out our manufacturing base and led to millions of deaths in the middle class from people on fentanyl. It's very so. This is how it went down.
It's like the Triffin dilemma. More importantly, it's a national security concern at this point, where we can't make a Roman and we can't do anything. I mean, we're the world's bank essentially, right? I mean,
it's a great idea just to fuck with people. If I was Xi and I was actually Trump, I'd be like, we are meeting in Moscow.
Probably the place to meet.
Just totally piss off everybody. Like, Trump's meeting with Putin and Xi.
Yeah. Look, go ahead. Sorry.
Do you think that we'll see the opportunity from the manufacturers, if they come domestically, where we'll see those new things that, from the future, like the new manufacturing plants, the most high-tech things ever built, and kind of like... we'll take that old manufacturing where you have a line of people on the assembly line and you see all robots.
It's highly possible, but people have to manage the robots and do stuff, and you can do more things. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, the stuff that's happening with TSMC and Nvidia building $500 billion investment in a manufacturing facility to build the highest end chips and stuff here. I mean, those are important and big deals, right? Those are the high end jobs and the high end manufacturing stuff that we're looking to bring here, right? Not necessarily making t-shirts and sweatpants or whatever, which we should make regardless. Have some level of domestic capacity in case we go to a war and we need stuff. There should be some level for national security purposes to have some of that manufacturing here, right? Where with medicine, pharmacy, all that kind of stuff. I personally think, if we can use that little small amount to incentivize a little bit of that here, great. It's a tax for sure. Let's get rid of the income tax. Let's have the tariffs be the tax. I think that's probably, I'd much prefer that personally.
And that's how he's actually going to win the fucking midterms. Because
peel off the income tax. That'll do it.
Everyone
that'll give
from
them
150 lower, you don't pay taxes. You're going to see motherfuckers come out of the woodwork, fucking vote. everyone's going to vote for Trump. You're going to have liberals, as soon as they hear that, go, fucking MAGA right, baby, yeah.
I think they were.
Keep my money.
They're saying they're getting $2 billion a day in tariff revenue. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Right,
I mean,
is that legit. Were they getting that before? Or is this new?
So that's a Trump number. I saw a number today from CBP that says it's closer to 500 million a day. But look, it's going to come in. It's going to come in. I mean, it's happening. Tariffs are coming, and they're
Buy Bitcoin.
It's yeah. I mean, look, I think they need the tariff revenues in order to help balance not that they're ever going to balance the budget, but it's going to pay for parts of the deficit, and so the deficit doesn't explode and become an even bigger issue that spooks the bond market, that leads to higher yields and more capital flight, right? We need things going in the other direction. So tariffs are part of the story.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Last week, I think it was the 3-year or maybe it was a 5-year, where like hardly anyone showed up, and the fucking Fed basically had to, purchase the rest of the offering.
So the 3-year auction last week was poorly received.
Yeah.
And so primary dealers, which are the big 20 banks, basically had to kind of step up and take an outsized portion of it, which was certainly surprising because 3-year paper is pretty money good. It's just that, foreigners didn't really show up in the way that they normally do because the yield on the 3-year was kind of too low. And so it wasn't, and it did kind of kick off a little bit of this bond market sell-off. There was a 10-year and a 30-year auction later in the week, which went better. But the bond market was very weak last week, and certainly was part of the reason why the administration kind of felt the need to flinch on the 90-day pause. But this could happen again. I mean, it's not, I mean, today we had a 20-year auction. It went okay, which is fine. I mean, we're doing more borrowing in the front of the curve, bills versus bonds, which is, not sustainable forever. We need to eventually term out our debt. It was something that Bessem was actually highly critical of Janet Yellen for doing this.
Oh yeah, she fucked us.
But he's doing the exact same thing that she did. It's not surprising, and I don't blame him because this is what we can have to do. But this is the stuff that
I know who's going to bring the bid, and I'm going to segue into our next segment here. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has indicated that cryptocurrencies are gaining mainstream acceptance and suggested that there might be some relaxation in banking regulations related to crypto and stablecoins. During a recent speech, Powell highlighted the need for a legal framework for stablecoins, acknowledging their growing role in the financial sector. It's kind of a surprise time to be talking about stablecoins.
I mean, the fastest growing source of demand for treasuries are stablecoins.
So when China and Russia and all these other countries go away.
So the idea is that my understand what I think part of my understanding is that stablecoins are kind of foreign citizens storing their wealth in basically dollars, because the dollar is more secure than the Venezuelan currency or any Middle Eastern currency or any Southeast Asian currency where there's or any African currency where there's risk of hyperinflation and expropriation. And so you can either store your money in stablecoins or in Bitcoin, right? I mean, and there's some combination there.
Combination of both, yeah.
Bitcoin is a little bit more volatile than the dollar, although recently, maybe not as much. But so
isn't that crazy to say?
The storing it in a dollar-based stablecoin in Nigeria, then that money, basically has to find a place to be invested, and increasingly that just goes into short-term T-bills, right? I mean, the U.S. And so the fastest growing source of demand for T-bills is stablecoins, and so
I've heard, I've actually said for years, the new Federal Reserve is actually Tether.
I'm going to make a bold prediction here.
New fucking Federal Reserve.
In the next 5 years, stablecoins will become the ` demand for treasuries.
Yeah, I think,
absolutely.
And this is the way to just go directly to the people
cut out all the middle
different
bullshit
of different countries and say, look, America's better than whatever country, whatever you got.
which is
Which is-
true. Which is mostly true.
Look, because other countries still have, rates of most emerging markets still have rates of inflation that are
We're
higher
the
than
tallest midget.
No, we're the nicest house on a shitty street. That's the way I like to look at it.
But risk of inflation or risk of expropriation in these emerging market countries is real. And also, look, if you're in Gaza, if you're in Syria, and you need to leave with all your wealth, you just kind of put it on a joystick, on a US, on a wallet, and
put it in a hot wallet.
whoever, and you just got to go, and you got to go. And
Take
so
your
you
seed
take,
phrase.
take all your wealth with you.
Well,
And so
remember your 12 words, and you're.
That's a real.
I know people who did that leaving Ukraine. Who I coached them through it. Hey, we're getting the fuck out of here. We need to get all our money. We're going to put it in Bitcoin or USDT. And I said, look, you got to memorize these 24 words, and 12 to 24 words, and when you go wherever you go, you just boop, boop, you regenerate it, and you're good to go.
Right. So I think that the regulation, environment in the U.S. is going to be much more tolerant of that, because we need the demand source, right? Because we're losing the foreign official demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
The state is not going to be investing as much in T-bills anymore, the central banks and the governments, but the people of those countries will.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Not to mention the digital economy, it'll stimulate as well.
Money can flow freely, permissionlessly. People can transact permissionlessly. Cut out all these middlemen.
Freedom, bitch.
All right, Paul, take us to our next take here.
So there's quite a few things trending.
Do that. What was the next one on the list? I'll go up.
Who is
Go
that?
to the very
hippie
top.
Fuck.
What was the last thing we talked about on the list? Play this guy.
America Empire must.
Play this video. Let's react to this video. This is Dearborn, Michigan, which is a very
liberal,
very liberal Muslim area of Michigan. But I just want you to. I just wanted to.
road trip.
I watched this. Take, and it was just very fascinating to see some people inside of America, where how many people have come into America and that literally are actively advocating for the destruction of America, whether they are legal or illegal citizens. It's
the message for the people of Gaza is going to be more of the message that should be sent to the people here, in that they have achieved victory. We haven't done anywhere near enough. And the people here, I promise you, we do feel ashamed. We do feel like we're not doing enough. We do feel like change needs to come, because change must come. And in the form that it must come is that this empire, the American empire that's been hurting our people since the beginning, the imperial Western powers that have been hurting our people since the beginning, they must fall. And inshallah, they will fall. And my message to the people of Gaza and the oppressed peoples across the world is that there are people here, both young and old, who are going to be willing to fight and are willing to put their lives and everything they can on the line to bring these empires down, because they must come down.
That's wild.
You know what? I strangely kind of agree with him.
Really? Let's hear it.
Yeah, because
Let's hear it.
this is why I love America, the idea. The last 125 years, that hasn't been America. What we've had is, and we're seeing it, USAID or whatever the fuck that shithole was. We have ruined this world using our military, using the progressive movement. We have went to war all over the world for nothing, for absolutely fucking nothing. There's a reason why World War I, they had to have a marketing campaign.
The war bonds? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Sell the bonds.
And then World War II, oh no, we got hit by Pearl Harbor. Yeah, motherfuckers. And you and I talked about that earlier. That shit, they knew it was coming. They pushed it to make it come.
I won't go that far, but I will respect your opinion. It's possible for sure, but I would say that I need to see more evidence of that too.
How many wars have we gone to?
Too
And
many.
It's always
Way too many.
us flying somewhere.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I think
That's absolute bullshit. America needs. We should have done what George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all of our founding fathers. Fuck the fuck off. It ain't our business. I love.
I just have a big
humanity.
problem with somebody being in America,
Oh yeah,
living
like
off of
this guy.
America, gaining all the benefits of what America has to offer, and then just saying like, "Hey, America must fall. Like the empire must fall."
What
Like,
I say
that's,
is the old system needs to fall.
But we need to preserve America ideals and values.
Yeah.
Not, the American empire needs to continue. We need to rein it in on what you're talking about. There's some stuff to fix, but I don't think that's what he's saying. He's saying basically we are the infidels and we need to fall.
What we need to do is get our military people out of everyone else's fucking country.
Yeah.
We have no reason to be. Why the fuck?
Unless they're paying us, I don't think we should be there. That's kind of my thought.
I keep your fucking money. I'd rather have my soldiers and my people here in America. Put them on the borders. We should not be all over the world protecting.
Yeah.
Because really,
the taxpayers shouldn't be paying us that, paying for that for the most part to be in all these other places. I think if South Korea wants us there, like I think what Trump did this last if whatever country wants us there and they want to pay the military, they want to pay the expense and reduce our tax revenue, I'm all for it. If we want to make a profit off of that and that country's gonna pay our guys to be there and people want to be in the military and have a job, I mean,
So you're all right.
Yeah.
If we send for profit our people over there. And then what happens if a couple of our people get killed? Well, it's for profit, right?
I would say, if you're in a country that wants you there as part of its defense force and you are signing up to be in the military to do that, and you choose, I'm not talking about a draft or forcing people to go there, but if you choose to do that, I don't see a problem with it. What I see a problem with is us spending $7 trillion of taxpayer money being in Afghanistan for 20 years and, tons of people die, tons of money's wasted, tons of lives lost for an active war not a defensive situation, but an active war. That's what I have a problem with. But if another country, like if an ally, South Korea, wants to pay our military personnel to have a job and be there.
Blackwater.
Yeah. Are they military contractors? Yeah, military contractors. Yeah, I don't know if that's enough to have the base and do all that, but I don't know how big Blackwater is. They're like little missions, aren't they? They're not like a huge force.
It kind of depends on what you need and how much money.
Paul, look that up. How big is Blackwater? I'm just curious. How many people work for them? How many mercs can they?
Let's see. Blackwater technically went out of business, and they changed their name into another company.
What's that? Let's find out what's actually. I don't know. I don't know if they can put 2 million people on a base or whatever. I mean, who knows? The bigger problem is the taxpayer spending for foreign wars. I think that we can argue over the specifics of our placing bases where our allies want us and that are willing to pay for it. That's a different story. Let's solve what you're describing first, which is the blatant wars and all of the crazy stuff that's occurring.
We need a good 10 or 15 or maybe even fucking.
So they had 1,000 contractors. I mean, that ain't
That was in Iraq alone. It says.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Oh no, that shit.
Let's see, roughly.
Trust me. Blackwater wasn't
160,000 people. Wow, that is pretty substantial. Wow. So 21,000 former special forces soldiers and wow, okay.
And the CIA.
So this is again a lot of people in the military after they're done with their service, they're going to get paid a little bit more. They're going to go back in the military and work for profit as a mercenary. Essentially, is what this looks like. Well, also it looks like it aligns philosophically with what the U.S. is doing. But again,
we need to worry about America.
I agree with you.
We need to bring all of our people home, and we need to huddle the fuck up.
Yeah.
And go, look, guys, we are Philly fucked. We are absolutely Philly fucked. We need to fix America. Let China do China. Look, you just leave us the fuck alone. We need to consume our own product, whatever that is. All I hear is, well, you'll have empty shelves at Walmart. How much of that shit do we need?
There is a factor of that, yeah.
No one walks into Walmart and sees what's not there. You only see what's there. It is like, gee, I wish they had a little floppy thing that I could scratch my back with. No one gives a fuck about that as long as there's food. And this is what we need to do. We need to change our mindset. If we purchase America products, America gets better. If we purchase Chinese products, Chinese get better. If we have England product, England gets wealth.
What do you think, Craig?
Well, for one, we can no longer afford to be the policeman for the world, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree with that.
So whether or not idealistically or culturally, forget that.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice to talk about advancing democracy globally and freedom, but we can argue whether or not we actually did that with the money we were spending. We probably
not.
But regardless of that, we cannot afford it anymore. So I wish that this administration would take a hatchet to the defense budget. I don't know why it's such a third rail here. I don't know why the defense budget needs more money to police the world, right? I mean, we should be cutting defense spending.
We should be cutting all spending,
in order to help balance the budget.
We spend like 3 times even with China.
Yeah, I mean, we're up to over 900 trillion, maybe close to $1 trillion a year on defense, and that doesn't include $350 billion a year to the VA to basically pay the annuity to the $7 trillion that we spent. Right, that wasn't just $7 trillion out the door. It's actually worse. It's $350 billion a year on the $7 trillion to basically deal with all the vets. Right, so we can't cut that. We should never cut veterans' benefits. We shouldn't.
But the fact that it exists in the first place is
so. Why are we not cutting defense? I don't know why that has.
We should.
We should be.
I completely agree with that because war is changing.
That's really my point.
A bunch of tanks.
That's my point, though.
Is you want 100,000 little drones.
Yeah,
I mean, you can see what's happening, right? The Houthis are creating havoc. And with little drones.
Yeah.
I mean, so war, and those are $1,000 or $10,000, not like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Get a Radio Shack.
Rest in peace to those Houthis, though. Rest in peace.
Yes. So look, I think that's for one is we need to stop doing that.
That was my point. Was hey, you want these soldiers? You want to pay the salaries of these American men that are here in your country, an ally? You pay for it, right? Like you're that's going to be the future for sure.
Absolutely. I say we tell South Korea, you better build some goddamn robots because our fucking people ain't coming there no more. Fuck off. We love you, but fuck off.
My name is Jeff. What do you have to say about this, Jeff?
Build more robots.
All right, Paul, take us to our next take.
So I thought this was interesting. Jack, previous CEO of Twitter, Dorsey is echoing a shared thought with Elon Musk that is fairly controversial. It's the idea of deleting IP law. And
make the Chinese really happy.
Found that, but they're already stealing it anyway, right? So I thought this was an interesting idea and something y'all should hash out. And I got my little idea on that too. But what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting, just the comments there. Nicole Shanahan replied, and then Jack replied to her, right? Nicole was RFK. That was RFK's running mate.
Yeah, actual IP professional here. No, IP law is the only thing separating human creations from AI creations. If you want to reform it, let's talk. Let's see what Jack says. Creativity is what currently separates us, and the current system is limiting that and putting the payments disbursement into the hands of gatekeepers who aren't paying out fairly. Interesting, yeah. Let's see what the response is there. I think information just likes to be free, right? So it's very hard to keep a lot of information from being free, right? Information yearns to be discovered and to be free. So I'm kind of like torn on this whole issue. I didn't really have,
blockchain.
I've been putting it back and forth in my head.
This is the ultimate use case for blockchain. It is the replacement.
Explain what you mean by that, Ben, because I don't think just putting something on a blockchain doesn't like an idea or technology doesn't necessarily stop someone else from copying you, right? That's kind of what intellectual property is, right?
Access. I'm not talking about putting something on a blockchain. What I'm actually saying is using a blockchain or a utility token to access and launch whatever software or whatever your IP is. You have to actually purchase access to that IP using a token or an NFT.
I see what you're saying, but once you know what that idea is, you can just copy it. You know, I guess, like, if somebody makes a software, yes, you can use blockchain to, you know, have access to it, to gate it, to do that, to, you know, but when somebody knows the intellectual property of how you made that software, they can just copy it and do their own thing.
Well, how they can do that now?
That's kind of what the argument here is, right? Like, that's kind of the idea of this whole equation, right?
At least you'd have a way that you could get that initial buy. You know, I mean,
I guess the question is, do you think that, like, again, this is our big bone to pick with China, is that they steal, we create something, you know, and then they steal the idea, copy, clone it, and then pump it out for 90%, you know, less. And the person who came up with the idea gets basically stolen from. So the question is, do you think that's okay? I mean, do you think there should be IP laws, or do you think there shouldn't be?
well, I don't think China gives a fuck about our IP law.
Well, that's the point. That's part of the reason we're having
Paul,
this,
you can
war,
scroll down a little more.
this whole thing.
Let's
Okay,
live
right
in
there.
reality. No matter what law we write,
Yeah.
China's going to look at it and giggle. They're going to go, oh, look how cute. They wrote another law.
I guess, you know, that comment there, what motivation would there be to create if there was no way to monetize? This is straight out of the China playbook, and Jack says execution and speed matters more. And I guess his point is that if we didn't have IP laws, there'd be like first mover advantage on ideas and quick, you know, quick to market without any regulatory delay. You just kind of make your product. It goes. You don't need your IP. You can monetize it as quickly as can, and then the free market kind of can
rips your head off.
can recreate it. But you know that forces you to continue to be more creative, right? I think his point is we have a creativity gap issue. We need to be more creative, and so if we were forcing people to kind of continue to be creative and outrun the clones, then we would be advancing society more rapidly. Maybe that's his point. I don't know, but I think that's what he's getting at.
And I think you're right. And as you explained, all I thought was, how quick is fucking technology going to move? With as soon as you put out a product, someone else runs it through AI and they improve on it. Next thing you know, your product is absolute dog shit 24 hours later.
I mean, this is kind of part of the argument, I think, in some way that Jeff Booth makes on deflation, right? I mean, basically, you kind of have this, you know, society that is kind of high. Technology is highly deflationary. And so if we can advance the society via creativity in a rapid way, we could bring down the cost of living to all citizens kind of exponentially. Yeah. And so, and what he obviously argues too is, you know, that the 2% inflation target is ridiculous in
just a made up number.
Right. So we should be okay as a society kind of embracing deflation, because that actually improves the real, you know, cost of living for folks. And so, yes, you may not get, you know, wage gains, but if your cost of living goes down 50% because food goes down, rent goes down, utilities go down, everything becomes more efficient, then all of a sudden, like, you have, exactly. So maybe lack of IP law would kind of push us further in that direction.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation. Honestly, I'm kind of like torn between both, because I see the benefits of both. But yeah, I mean, you know, information does yearn to be free, and it's kind of hard to contain that. So I think, you know, if you have an idea or a breakthrough or an invention, you know, and you want to profit off of it, maybe keep it secret, maybe protect that secret, and leave government and all this other stuff out of it, right? Like, if I have some IP, if I come up with an invention, like, I want to keep it secret so I can produce it. But, you know, the argument on the level of China is that they just, you know, you go over there to produce it because they're the producer, and then they just steal all your ideas, right? So it's
and if we put tariffs on, then you know, then that product can't get here so easily, and
levels the playing field a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think what is happening is the whole world is fucking getting decentralized, and I mean mega decentralized, where tariffs will apply to a certain product or a certain brand or a certain company, not just a country. I think we're going to have to actually decentralize the exchange of value. And that's where blockchain comes in, because Trump could actually say he recognizes a certain wallet is a certain company. And he was like, well, you guys are kind of fucking around, you guys are using some of our IP, I'll tell you what there, pal, we're going to blacklist your wallet. What happens there?
So you do think the IP laws are good? I'm trying to pin you down here, whether you're pro or against.
I think we're fucked. I don't think it matters because.
So Craig's a no. He kind of, you're kind of leaning more towards Jack's idea of execution and speed.
I think it through. I think it's interesting. I think we need to decide: are we going down this deflationary, exponential growth technology path, or are we going to try to slow it down with law? And typically, slowing things down, somebody else decides, you know what, fuck it, like we're just gonna.
It's just worse for society in general. We're gonna get all this, all these.
It's like once the idea is out of, once the genie's out of the bottle, that maybe we're gonna get rid of IP law. It's already done, right? We just get rid of it.
Here's a great example: is actually AI. Once AI was out, it's out. You're done.
Yeah.
There isn't like, well, let's write a law to regulate.
Yeah, it's not going back. It's not going back. Just like Bitcoin, it's not going back in the bag.
Yeah.
It's out. It's released.
Because laws are just illusions.
Yeah.
You will own nothing and be happy.
Thank you, Klaus.
It's actually funny. I'm gonna have Jeff in for a series here in the next coming months. Hopefully, we're trying to. We're going back and forth on the dates, but we're gonna do a book series on his book. So stay tuned,
guys. On that topic, I found. I'm listening to you guys, and definitely all good points. But this whole concept, I think, is aligning with this narrative of us essentially having to innovate ourselves out of debt. Right? We're going to have to grow, and I think that this is their attempt to essentially unleash this next wave of innovation. Because what is going to hold us back? Right? In China, you have this top-down control. If the CCP leadership says move, the entire regime will instantly transition, right? Whereas here in the United States, it takes quite a while for us to get through all that regulatory red tape. So I think that this is their attempt to circumvent a lot of that red tape just by removing this hurdle. And with AI, there's also this notion that it is essentially taking all of people's creative work and repurposing it, right? It's scraping all of these trademarked, copyrighted materials and essentially building its models off of that. So they're going to get in some legal trouble, likely, because there's not really regulation around that. So
the cat's out of the bag, I think.
Cat's out of the bag.
People can run open source models now that have already been pre-trained on all this stuff. I mean, there's really, no way to put the cat back in the bag, in my personal opinion.
We're fucked.
It's Paul, take us to our next take.
Taxi driver, you better get on the app.
Take us to our next take. Let's see what we're gonna unpack next. There we go. I wasn't able to make it. Sam messaged me over the weekend, but today is Florida's blockchain day at the Capitol, where I bring up businesses to both advocate and educate members of the Florida House and Florida Senate. We are jam-packed with meetings discussing Florida's Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Bill, UCC Article 12, Bitcoin ATM legislation. We have lots of work to do, and we're getting it done. So I missed that today to be here with you guys. So I hope you realize how special the three of you are to me. All right, Paul, take us to our next take. Shout out to Sam. He's done a great job advocating for, Florida business and blockchain in the state of Florida, the beautiful state of Florida.
It does seem like
educating lawmakers, talking to people.
Yeah, it does seem like the momentum on strategic Bitcoin reserve at the state level is taking off more rapidly than the federal level, and I think it makes a lot of sense at the state level.
Beautiful.
All right, guys, I got to piss.
You're welcome to hop in and hop.
We'll be right back.
All right, we'll see you in a minute. Let's move on to the next take. Question for the group. We got non-fungible Einstein.
So this is actually Alessandro.
I know.
Go ahead.
Question for the group. How concerned should we be that Bitcoin mining continues to be heavily dependent on ASICs sourced from Asia? Will tariffs reveal that this supply chain reliance could be Bitcoin's weakest link as we move towards a strategic reserve? This is a fascinating question. So yes, a lot of that supply chain is in Hong Kong, Asia, some of these places. What we've seen in the past, couple years is a lot more companies pop up producing. I know Bob Burnett is working on something, doing a chip here, I believe. I'm not 100% on this, but positive on this, but there are other options popping up, and supply gets moved all over the world constantly. Supply is going here, it's going to this country, it's going to that country. So it's not so easy to just make tons more of these extremely intensive machines. They're very expensive, they're very large, there's a lot of silicon chips and stuff inside of them. So all of these machines are widely dispersed, and Bitmain and certain companies that are creating them, all these different companies, they're not creating tons of that new supply that will, because most of the supply is already distributed online in data centers. So it's a much more long-term, kind of thing that might play in here. But I'm sure, just like Taiwan Semiconductor is doing, they're going to be moving chip fabs to the United States to build these things. So these things are going to get manufactured and built all over the world. That's kind of my thought. So as of right now, not a problem. I don't think it's a weak link. I think it takes a very long time to build data centers, to continually put machines online and do all this stuff. And I think, as we've seen with NVIDIA, as we've seen with TSMC, chip fabs are coming to the United States. They're being built, and they're going to be producing high-end silicon fabrications.
I think we'll see smaller technology and more mobile technology as we grow and the space grows, and it'll be more dispersed in that way as well.
Yeah, we're seeing stuff like BitAxes and little small miners that are popping up, and those are great for distribution and for decentralization. Will they have a big share of the hash rate? Probably not. I mean, you're still going to have big mining farms that are putting out lots of electricity to secure that network being built and deployed. But it's nice to see that distribution to get more people involved.
Does BitX connect through Wi-Fi?
Yeah, it can. Yeah.
Okay, now imagine like with a data connection, like a mobile cellular data connection, where you can. Yeah.
It's really more about the power, right? Because the ASIC stands for a single integrated circuit. So it's a chip that does one thing, and all that thing does is hash SHA-256, which is Bitcoin's security algorithm. So it hashes that algorithm, and to do that, it uses a lot of power. So your phone, maybe you could run one little chip, kind of like a BitX, but would also probably overheat very quickly.
Do you know what the hash rate is on those BitX?
So I'm not positive, but I think it's like in a traditional ASIC, you've got 3 to 4 control boards in there, and in the control boards, there's tons of little chips that are hashing, and I think what BitX did is they just took a couple of those little chips out of one of the hash boards, and so it's just like 1/20th or 1/10th or 1/15th the hash rate of an actual miner. So if a regular miner is making $10 a day in Bitcoin, this little chip is making 10 cents or 20 cents per day in Bitcoin. That makes sense. But great for decentralization. So up to 400 gigahashes. So actually that's a lot. So the BitX Max, let's see. So some of the new ones are up to 1.6 terahashes. So yeah, you're one. Actually, it's less than I thought. You're like 1/200th of what some of the new stuff is doing, or like 1/50th. So very small amount. A couple cents a day in Bitcoin. UK, there we go. UK Supreme Court. This is what you were talking about earlier. UK Supreme Court has decided that it took many courts, many people to figure out that women are people born as biologically female. So there's a lot of celebration about this in the UK and in the West. Now every country needs to get on board and recognize in law what is a woman. Congratulations to UK women. What do you guys think about this? What do you think, Jeff? Chime in.
Women are women. I think men are men and women are women.
Yeah.
I have a hard time understanding where that intersection of one being the other. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around it. I don't really understand it.
Like the logic of what's been going on, or
yeah, I don't know how to say this. But I mean, if you were born with a dick and balls, you're a dude.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's hard to wrap my head around.
It is very difficult to wrap our head around. But
having a procedure, I think the best meme that I've seen is if you once you pass and 1,000 years go by, when they find your bones, you're essentially none of this is going to matter. You be identified as one or the other.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just don't understand when And I'm sorry for being ignorant about it, but
No, you're not being ignorant. I think it's just common sense. I mean, I have no problem with, the main issue is, leave the kids out of it. And, you can't compete if you were a biological male, if you were born with, a dick and balls, you should never be competing against, even if you cut it off, you still have a lifetime of muscle, testosterone, muscle mass, bone density, all of these different things. You still have a insane advantage. You should never be allowed to compete with biological women. The whole thing is ridiculous. And it's crazy that it's gotten to this level that we have to, a Supreme Court of a country has to rule on this. It just blows my mind. It just shows where we're at in society right now.
Honestly, I feel like this whole identity politics thing has come around ever since Occupy Wall Street, right? We were very close to identifying the root of the problem, and then they decided to subvert us with all of this nonsense.
There's a famous meme of that, like where everyone's outside the banker's office, and he's like, they're all like protesting outside with the Occupy Wall Street signs, and the banker's like in there, in the room, and he's like, show him this, show him the flag, show him.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I don't know if you can find it. I didn't tag it, but it is a classic meme. It's probably not. I haven't seen it for a very long time. There's kind of a version of it right there. Foreclose on banks, not people. Introduce them to identity politics. Perfect. There's Klaus Schwab, or is that him? Yeah, there's a better one of the banker in the office, but it's kind of funny. All right, you have any takes on this, Craig?
Yeah, nothing too substantial, but I do think these issues get magnified by media and
there it is. You found it
by maybe to Paul's point, maybe this is the way to keep folks on the right and folks on the left fighting with each other rather than kind
over
of
nonsensical things,
getting together and fighting what the real evils are. But look, I think there's bigger issues in the society that command our time and attention. But I also think that these wins, let's say, is a reflection of that there are people who are like, these people are in some ways they're suffering themselves, right? And they're looking for their own personal wins because they feel like they're being left behind in the society as well. And so, I feel for people who feel like they need to or want to go through these transitions, and if that's what they need to do, that's what they need to do, and whatever that's that's how they want to live their life. But I think these issues become magnified, and it makes it seem like this is happening to a large percent of the population. These are infinitesimally small amounts of folks who are being affected, I think, by these things, and are being magnified in ways to kind of keep us apart. And look, I mean, Trump talks about this, this win on transgender sports like every other day. It's kind of like, okay, like we got it. Let's move on to the things that are, I think, more important. But it is what it is.
All right, Paul, take us to our next take here.
I'm back. And I got Red Bull. You got a bidet in your bathroom.
You better
dude.
fucking believe it, baby.
Dude, my balls ain't never been so clean. I swear to God, my asshole you could eat off right now.
We're living good in here. Once you have a bidet, you'll never go back. I mean, that's just a fact.
I gotta get one of those. Fuck, I got a little turned on. I'll be honest. That's why it took so long. I was like, whoa, this feels good.
Oh, I know this guy, this Craig Shapiro guy. Let's read his take. Powell reiterating, we are well positioned to wait for greater clarity before considering any adjustments to our policy stance. Fed is in no hurry here to add accommodation, and that's the problem. The Fed put is lower. Back to you, Trump. Where is the next put strike? Why don't you unpack this a little bit?
Is that you in a suit?
That's me.
Damn, you're a good-looking guy, dude.
Got that. I was a professionally done photo shoot.
Look at this Wall Street guy over here. Look, got the suit on.
I look good. I do some client advisory work, so sometimes I have to put on a sport jacket every once in a while, and not just a yellow casual Naples wear.
You like Zelensky everywhere you go.
Yeah. But no, the Fed Chair Powell had an interview today. He gave a speech, and look, there's a segment of the markets that wants, needs, desires the Federal Reserve to bail them out consistently with more money, more printing whenever there are losses in portfolios. And so, look, right now with the tariff regime we have, there is inflationary concerns and there is growth slowdown concerns. And if we have a situation where tariffs are in for a long period of time and there's ratcheting up of tariffs, then this inflationary concern can exist for a long period of time. And so the Federal Reserve is not going to be in a position to be able to cut interest rates, while inflation and inflation expectations are running well above normal. And
what are your thoughts on that compared to like what Truflation is showing now, where it's like just dropped off a cliff?
Yeah, look, I think there are certain goods that are ultimately tariffs will be deflationary if we don't have money supply growth, because wages won't really go up. And so there'll just be certain goods are priced much higher, and then there'll be replacement. And so there'll be other goods that are priced lower. I think the issue really, though, is inflation expectations and how people are behaving because of the tariffs. And how companies might react to it, right? So if there are tariffs and companies are pushing pricing through to keep margins elevated, then this inflationary environment can just exist for a longer period of time. I think the Truflation stuff has a lot of oil in it, and so if oil prices are a big driver of the Truflation, and so oil prices have been down year over year and more recently, and so I think that's been a driver of that. And so, but look, as it stands right now, the economy is running fairly fine, right? The labor market is pretty tight. Retail sales have been pretty good. GDP has been okay. It's been slowing, but it's been okay. And inflation is running above target. And so what the Fed is saying, all this uncertainty is not a result of what we're doing. And the uncertainty in the economy is because of Trump. And so until the uncertainty goes away, we're not going to do anything. It's not really our issue here. It's not our problem as long as inflation is running above target. Because what Powell knows, one thing that he definitely knows is he's leaving in 13 months. His term is over. And so what he doesn't want to be is Arthur Burns 2.0 and allow inflation to run hot again because then he will go out as a true idiot. Because he's kind of right now, I think he's seen as having done a very, very good job in navigating the economy and the markets. And he kind of took us through COVID and he brought the inflation. I'm not saying this is all accurate, but the perception is he took us through. He did really good things in COVID, printing money when it was needed. They overstayed their welcome. They let inflation get too high, but then they helped bring it down. They didn't complete the job, but the economy never really rolled over. But if inflation were to reaccelerate right now into the end of his term, I mean, he would go out as a moron. So I think he's better off saying, we're just going to hold off. And if the economy rolls over, your guy did it. You elected him, and this is what he did, and it's not really for us to do. And I'm out of here. I'm out of here soon. So I'm not surprised by this by him. And so he will act when financial markets get incredibly disorderly. We are not even close to that at this point.
He has a hard job. He's like walking on jello. I mean, because no matter what he does, everyone fucking points a finger at him. Because, well, you printed too much money. Well, you didn't print enough.
Hey, it's hard to be a central planner.
And
the most important good in society, the price of money. I mean, we got to have communist control of that, right?
Absolutely.
It's a tough job to be a central planner.
And that's why we need Bitcoin, because it is the true leveler of all fucking currencies. That's all it does is eat fiat. That's its only job. Hey, Bitcoin, what do you do? I eat fiat. That's it. And that's why, and I think everyone's realizing this now, is we are transit. Now, hopefully this is a slow transition. We are going to slowly transition into a global economy that resolves eventually in Bitcoin. Because it's the only...
I do see Bitcoin being the global reserve asset for the world eventually. I mean, I think that's that's my prediction. End game. It just makes sense, and a politically neutral,
Yep.
hard money that gold served that purpose for so long, so successfully. I see Bitcoin taking on that role, whether that's 20 years away, 15 years away, 10 years. I don't know, right? I don't know.
Hopefully slowly.
Yeah.
But I think the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see some fucking wicked price jumps.
Yeah.
Because we're at a pressure point right now where the floodgates are opening. And we got MicroStrategy, we got all of these big dollar people that if, as you just explained, if the Fed even whispers a little word like, we're starting to feel a little bit more dovish, you're going to see Bitcoin and gold go to the fucking moon.
I tagged a Raoul Paul chart somewhere where he's laying over like the M2 money supply and
Yeah.
it's like Bitcoin's price. Have you seen that?
That's a big chart of his.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
He does some creative chart work.
Yeah.
So you're saying he's fudging that chart a little bit, or he's massaging it, or is it?
I just think the scaling and like, but look, the truth is
The trend
money
seems to be-
money supply growth historically has had a very positive correlation to Bitcoin and to gold, and so
Go up, Paul. I think there was
I
that
think,
picture that kind of talks about it. There,
Yeah.
Someone else is talking about it here. Thomas Fair.
Yeah, and what's the lead? What's the lag? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? I mean, you can kind of backfill. Look, I think the truth of the matter is
There's a correlation there.
we're
no doubt.
getting closer to the point where if the global economy really does roll over and we have some of the trueflation stuff kind of accelerates and we go into some deflation, central banks will print money, and a lot of it, and it'll be the Fed.
Look at
it'll be
China right now.
It's already
So I think that
deal with what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So that will be constructive. That's why Bitcoin is kind of holding in as well as it has, and is decoupling from its correlation to Nasdaq. That's why gold is 3,300 plus and making new highs every day, as folks are storing wealth in a neutral reserve asset that is not U.S. Treasuries anymore. And Bitcoin will serve that purpose, I think, for people, and maybe already is in a lot of ways. It's going to be a while, I think, before governments kind of get there. I mean, obviously El Salvador has done it, but gold is still kind of recognized by sovereigns as the place that you could do this. But for people can't easily just go buy gold. Right, they can easily buy Bitcoin. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I bought a gold coin the other day from Costco. It's not. It's got. It's like.
They're selling.
They sell you. You can buy them from. You can buy them from Costco.
Liquidity too is like, how do you? Not as nowhere near as liquid as
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
exactly.
It's
just
it's like mail versus email.
right. So for the people, I think Bitcoin will be there, and so I think for now you gotta have to own a bit of both, and
No doubt.
but I think there'll be a transition period at some point where a country, maybe it's the U.S., kind of establishes itself as a real holder of Bitcoin, and then that maybe flips the script on, is Bitcoin better than gold? And
I hope that's us. That's all I say.
Yeah.
I hope it's us.
What do you think about Powell? Like, what do you think the right decision is? When do you think he should start cutting, or if at all?
Never. He can't.
I mean, I think that right now the cost of capital is not the deterrent to economic activity. I think it's the uncertainty issue in the economy. So I think for now, cutting would just not do anything. It would be like wasting. It would just be wasting bullets. Look, I think the economy is gonna slow because of these tariffs, and I think there'll be some in labor issues. Right, there'll be a uptick up in unemployment, probably through the summer, and so if that puts us kind of into the third quarter here, where we're starting to see more signs of it. We know that tariffs are here. They're not going anywhere. The 90-day period is kind of come and gone, and every country that made its deal, and everybody else this is the state of play. And then we are about to pass the budget, which is going to have big tax cuts. And so I think the Fed will be looking at cutting rates in the third quarter. But for now, because of the uncertainty, they're just kind of sitting on their hands. But I think the issue is that the Fed sitting on its hands and not providing that liquidity is what's going to bring the market down, right? We're going to find the market's going to now find the new equilibrium point where Trump says, okay, forget the tariffs, maybe, or let's ratchet down the China issue. It's becoming a problem. And I don't think that it's at the levels that we saw last week. I think it's going to be lower than that.
So you think stock market still has a ways to come down?
Oh,
And
there's a lot of hot air in that.
Do you think Bitcoin has decoupled at this point, and now Bitcoin's?
I go back and forth. I think it will. I certainly believe it will relatively outperform. Is it going to go up? Absolutely. In another liquidity crisis where there's more deleveraging, I'm not so sure. I think it could be one of those things where we kind of it trails, it goes down, and then the minute we get the whiff of the Fed, we're right back out to where we were. But that path, I think, is could be choppy to down first before it goes right back up.
I think the reason that we're about to freaking launch and go big is because for years everyone's looked at it and went, well, when we print money, that's when Bitcoin goes up. Eventually, it will be a flight to safety.
Yeah. So it's multiple factors, not just the self-fulfilling prophecy.
I see it differently. I see it as now we have use case. I mean, we were actually talking earlier about, you could have 90% of a bond and you could do 10%. We're actually finding utility now. That's a whole for years, all I've heard is, well, what can you do with it? I mean, what's it for? Well, now we have use cases. And I mean, Michael Saylor has literally proved to every public company, look at me. I mean, we have major corporations who don't need it yet, but they will. Because as this shit all collapses, they're all going to see exactly what Michael Saylor did. His fucking company was almost dead. I mean, literally was almost dead. And he's like, fuck it, I'll buy Bitcoin, see what happens.
I think there was a little bit more truth in that, but that's a nice way to summarize it.
I'm generalizing it,
I know. Just teasing.
And now look at him. He's, well, what is your company now? Well, we are a fucking Bitcoin company, and so many other, what I would call like a zombie company.
Zombie companies, a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them are going to run the Bitcoin.
That's right. Like GameStop did that.
Yeah. Oh, you talk about a zombie company. That fucker, they're lucky they're still alive.
Yeah. All the plebs buying up the stock. Fuck the fundamentals. We're just going to buy the stock.
Literally Blockbuster 2.0 right there.
Oh my goodness!
Like 5 minutes left.
Okay, cool, Paul. Let's take a couple quick takes at the end. Pull up the Ron DeSantis take. I wanted to highlight that this is what Florida's doing as opposed to what California is doing. So, Hope Florida has transitioned 30,000 Floridians off welfare programs, saving $100 million and getting those in need on a pathway to self-sufficiency. Mary Lou is one of those Floridians who has been helped. So the video just kind of talks about how she was going through a rough time and had some stuff going on and needed some help, some financial help, and they basically connected her with Hope Florida, which is kind of like a charity that helped her find a new job, find a better job, become self-sufficient. And this is, instead of just sending a check to somebody and putting them on the government dole, this is a solutions-based government we have here in Florida, which is the complete antithesis of what California is doing. So I just kind of wanted to highlight the two approaches and.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Charities will help people.
Yeah.
Government will kill people.
Well, in this case, this is good government. We're a little help, and then pushing them to become self-sufficient. I think there's just something freeing about the soul. Like there's something deeply human about this approach of hey, instead of just giving somebody a handout, we're going to give you a hand up. We're going to help you help yourself. Right?
Yep.
So just a different form of government.
Work feels good.
Yeah.
There's
purpose in it, right? You feel purpose. If you're doing what you love, obviously we're in an industry and space that we absolutely love. So every day just I'm glad to be here. It's fun to talk about this stuff.
Who the wait a second, scroll up.
I don't know what's going on here. Who is this? Fred Piccolo, New College of Florida Director of Marketing and Media, was arrested last night on charges of exposure of sexual organs. I don't know what's going on.
His organs?
I don't know, but that's a funny face he's doing on photo.
Somebody's dick.
Oh my goodness. All right, Paul, take us to Caitlin Long's post and we'll close out on that.
Oh, I love her.
I love her too. She's fantastic. You got it up there, yeah. So I wanted to hear you guys' take on this, but checking in, it looks like U.S. federal spending is still tracking up versus last year. So much for those Doge cuts. I know some of the spending is being accelerated, so it's spent before Doge arrives to start cutting, but still it's notable that Doge hasn't actually cut spending yet. So what do you guys think about this? Can you scroll down a little bit, Paul, to show the charts? So what exactly is happening here? Is it just the fact that they haven't come to a new, because I know there's this whole thing in Congress with the Senate and the House, and they're like trying to get this budget through. Like, one of the budgets has cuts, one of them doesn't.
Right now we're spending money on the Biden budget, right?
Okay.
So this was the budget that was passed for, last year, which runs from October of 24 through September of 25. That was already kind of in the cake. So it was, and so the budget they're trying to do now is for the next year. So the rate of spending growth isn't surprising. I mean, basically, some of that spending did get front loaded. Biden spent some of that to kind of keep the economy propped for the election.
Yeah.
And tax receipts have been coming in okay. So look, I mean, the deficits are outrageous, and the issue is right now as they're going through this budget negotiation process, they're trying to make the tax cuts permanent. The Trump tax cuts are trying to make them permanent, and they're trying to basically do a few other things, no tax on tips. So, a bunch of other shit that they're trying to do. And there's not enough spending cuts that are being talked about here. And this is Republicans who are basically saying, yeah, we're cool with, a deficit expanding budget
Crazy,
again.
absolutely insane.
And the idea from the administration is that basically that the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office's scoring is a bunch of bullshit. And so don't worry, the real growth will be there. And ultimately the tax receipts will be there. And so we actually won't generate these levels of deficits. And we'll also have tariff revenue, which they give us no credit for. But
tariff revenue is coming in. I mean, we're
but
seeing
it's,
that
but
so,
this is but basically, so, but the
the
new budget is if there's basically 10 to 15 House Republicans, Freedom Caucus people who kind of hold the keys here. And if they fold, the deficit's going to go up again. Despite all the rhetoric, despite all the talk about cutting government spending, cutting the deficits, getting back to a balanced budget, whatever, it's bullshit.
I was trying to read about this. They were like, there was a bunch of disputes, and like they were saying, like, the Freedom Caucus people were saying no, this, and then one of the guys was saying just like, let's pass this budget, but this is not the final budget.
They passed a continuing resolution.
What is it called?
Basically, they passed a continuing resolution, so they just kind of bought a little bit more time.
Say they're going to still fix it.
Negotiate. We are under. There is a time constraint, though. They have to. We're operating under a debt ceiling, and so the government will run out of money, and can't do any net new borrowings probably in the middle of August. So they have to come to an agreement, and they will on the budget at some point. But so they kind of passed this one because they got assurances that from Senate Republicans that in the actual bill there will be a lot of spending cuts. But then the moderate Republicans came out today and said, well, we're not going to be voting for a bill that really has cuts to, Medicare, because our constituents need that shit. So, this is going to be a tricky situation, and, it'll get down to crunch time. We'll see. I mean, but I suspect in the end, what's going to wind up happening is we're going to pass a budget and the deficit's going to grow. Because that's what happens.
Sounds like that happens every fucking time. I hope you're wrong, Craig. I honestly hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong.
I would say let's give them a little bit more time.
Yeah.
They've only been in office for like 90 days or 100 and something days.
A lot of stuff's happening.
Yeah, like
it's like that quote that you said.
Man.
There's weeks where decades where nothing happens, and weeks where decades happen.
Don't get me wrong. I love Caitlin. Shit, babe. Settle the fuck down.
Yeah.
Right? Give us some time.
Right.
Elon's working 4 motherfucking jobs here, man.
You're not wrong.
They got his shit blowing up all over the place.
Yeah. Anybody else have some closing thoughts before we hop off here?
There was just one thing that
Any questions?
Or very important. I need you to react
okay.
to this pressing issue of whether or not we will be a multiplanetary species.
This is a video of the landing with Katy Perry and crew coming back from space. They hit land and someone inside opens the door. And Jeff Bezos runs to the door. What is this?
That doesn't look like a return from space.
So what this indicates
What's
is
going on here?
before the 7 brave, incredibly brave astronaut women.
I read that they sent 7 women up and they didn't have any. They weren't controlling anything. It was like an automated thing.
Right. It
Would
was
you let a woman drive? Fuck no.
Tell that to my wife.
Fucking running right in like a satellite or something.
Who drove here, Heidi or you?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't let women drive me. That's a good way to die.
He's so stupid, Ben. I love it.
so I guess fake or real? Was this fake or real? Who knows?
Well,
but
was
this
what
does
fake?
not-
I'm confused. I don't even
you
understand what this
didn't
is.
go down this rabbit hole yet. So,
I got more important shit to do than worry about women getting out of a fucking pod.
well,
What I want to
there's
know,
more to it.
The fake coming out of out of a thing. I'm confused. What are we even talking
So,
about here?
on the news, Jeff Bezos actually had to he had to use these big, this big wrench to open up this door because apparently the pressure was, very strong. But here it shows that they were able to open it easily from the inside. Then the woman rushes there and she rushes up to it and tells them to close it again. And then you can see
Maybe he
them-
just wanted to look big and tough for the photo shoot. Maybe that's what that was. Hey, you're fucking up my photo shoot. That's what that looks like.
right. It could be that, or it could be another massive.
It's probably just a staged photo shoot. That's what I think.
yeah,
It's all
and
marketing to.
That's
get
just
people
marketing.
to
They wanted to
take
make.
other
Jeff
people's
Bezos has
pictures.
been working out. They want to show him with his big guns now, and he wants people to see him with his big guns.
what
opening up the
why
door. I love it.
7 women in one capsule. Oh, I guarantee they were bitching.
They
the
must
whole
have only
time.
been up there for a couple hours. Because
Oh yeah,
minutes.
because
how long?
11 minutes.
Oh my. Okay.
oh okay.
Because if it was 11 hours,
It's like
it would be World War III. It would be World War III in there.
They're like, you wore the same shirt, bitch. What the fuck?
Oh, Paul. So, what do we
So-
got here? Bitcoin Day Tampa, June 14th, 2025. Bitcoin Day is always a great conference. Highly recommend anybody who's interested in learning more about Bitcoin and being able to interact and talk to people, talk to speakers. I speak at the conference. Ben speaks at the conference.
I'll be
Craig
there.
speaks at the conference. A lot of people, a lot of great Bitcoiners are always there talking and speaking. And it's a very
He'll be there.
BJ will be there. Chris will be there. So many, tons of people will be there. Wesley, Nick, tons of people that are on this podcast all the time, and other Bitcoiners who may or may not be local to Florida. Because I think right now this Bitcoin Day is in Florida, but there's also one in I think the MicroStrategy headquarters coming up in Tyson, Virginia,
Yeah.
in the next couple months as well. There's CJ, but just a great conference to go. I mean, when you go to Bitcoin Day, like when you go to the Vegas conference and you're walking around, there's just so much happening at the same time, and it's hard to like even comprehend. Like there's networking and cool booths, and it's like you can't even take it all in. You're just like it's just constant FOMO. But when you go to Bitcoin Day, it's just like it's a 1-day event. You go, you have breakfast, you have lunch, you see panels, you get to talk to people. It's just a really good, intimate, small conference. So I highly recommend everybody checking it out. They do a great job with the conference. It looks like there's a Sound Money soiree here as well. So
And
check it out.
Oh, let me announce that at that event, someone will win $5,000 worth of Bitcoin from me.
Oh, wow. Bitcoin Ben's
Nice.
Crypto Club.
Nice.
Very generous. Hopefully, why don't you pull up Bitcoin Ben's Crypto Club here, Paul? Show the people about Bitcoin Ben's Crypto Club here. If you want to learn, if you're, Ben, why don't you tell everybody kind of what you do and, mentioned the club a little bit and what the idea behind the club is.
Yeah, we are education facilities for blockchain, AI, and cryptocurrencies, and soon robots. I'm literally going to buy a robot for each club, and there's going to be robots in there.
That's awesome.
All right. What we do is we help you. We help educate regular people locally, and we also work with larger corporations. We work with smaller corporations. We work with lawnmower shops. I mean, literally, and we also, because we are a PMA, like you and I were talking about, we can actually help you get a loan for actual Bitcoin, and we can get you some Bitcoin with no KYC because we are a private membership organization. And anyone from the federal government or local government who hears that, you can have a hot cup of fuck off. Because this is America. We are free. And check out our club. We have one in Sarasota. We have one in, let's see, Nashville.
Can I still get a burger in Sarasota if I go? It's Bitcoin
Oh,
Banks
hell
burger.
yeah, dude. I got my food truck. That's bad.
It's really, it's honestly really cool. So, you know, if you have people that just don't understand the technology, they want to learn about new things. And if you see one of Bitcoin Ben's clubs, you can literally just walk in and they have people there that will literally help you, teach you how to you know, have a wallet, teach you about seed phrases, teach you about Bitcoin, teach you about different cryptocurrencies. I mean, it's just a fascinating, cool, hands-on experience. So if you are in any of these cities and, you know, where Ben has clubs, highly recommend
Look at that
walking in and
fat
checking,
fuck.
walking in and checking out.
How's that?
Look at that. Red Bulls and cigarettes is a hell of a drug. Lost about 40 pounds. Looking pretty dapper.
68 pounds.
68 pounds, 69 pounds. You got to bump that up. Come on. We got to add at least 1 pound to get to
There's a
69
cool-
pounds.
There's a cool resort coming, I believe, to El Salvador.
Yes, we're actually launching actually 3 of them, a resort and a higher end resort, and then a smaller like hotel. And also all right, I won't give this away yet, but there will be, I'm going to own a fucking bank in El Salvador. Seriously.
Bitcoin Ben's Bank.
You're damn right, but hey, you go big or you go the fuck off.
I love it. I love it.
And
All right.
lastly, we
Craig, why don't you
Yeah.
hop in here and tell us about the Bear Traps report?
Yeah, I work at the Bear Traps Report. We provide research. If you go in that dark green, take your game to the next level thing, you can see we have some products for institutional research, which is where we focus for the most part. But we just started, scroll down a little bit, more. Right there, the one idea.
So you're not just making this shit all
Yeah.
up off the top of your head. You're
Yeah,
actually
so the one
doing some
idea,
research.
the one idea is a piece of research we put out every week, which is like a 10-page report where we kind of go through a big kind of observation or investment idea or investment theme that we're getting from our institutional network. And so it says currently closed there, but if you
Give us the one
if
idea.
you click on it, then we'll figure it out. So it's meant more for small retail investors who are
Spill the beans
looking
on
for,
this week.
for-
We can't click on it. What's going on here? Get us in here, Paul.
Yeah, no, we don't. It's not published. One of the ideas a couple of weeks ago, it was some of the U.S. coal stocks were an idea. Then we talked a little bit about the end of U.S. dollar exceptionalism as an idea, and buying volatility was an idea. A bunch of gold miners. So we've been topical. We've been timely with with the way we're kind of navigating the markets to start 2025. So come join us.
All right,
Cool.
guys. Give us a follow, a like, a subscription, whatever platform you're looking or watching this on, I guess. But thank you for listening in, and we'll be back Friday at 4:30 p.m. So hope to have some of you guys back.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much.
Thanks,
It's a wrap.
guys.
Love you guys.
The runway.